Hello everybody, and welcome to the texturing, lighting and rendering portion of the AT4 tutorial. We'll jump right into it now. It's not going to be anything crazy complex. We're just going to be using some simple nodes what allow us to basically skip a lot of the advanced processes, but by all means, if you feel the need to delve into UV layers and stuff, go ahead. But for this tutorial I'm just going to be keeping it relatively simple. Right, so obviously since these are all different parts we need to texture them individually, and in order to do that we'll jump into our rocket body here and go right to the bottom what we've got outputting, and we want to basically bring in, if you type in you right click or press tab and you press UV and then we want texture, press enter to bring that in, connect the two up, and now you won't see anything yet. But what that's done is that allowed us to basically tell it that there's a texture what's going to be placed on here, and we get to tell it or kind of like what direction to go in. So we want it to be cylindrical since we're basically dealing with a cylinder here. And once we've done that, that's all good. And we want to bring in after that a UV quick shade. Connect them up. Now output this, and you can see the UV map has appeared on the item, and we can see exactly how it's going to interact with it. So like it stretches a little bit here, but we can deal with that. You basically want to have your whatever you want to texture the rocket launcher as. I'm going to be using an urban camo shape. So bring up your textures folder, and I'm going to be using urban camo. So I'll bring that in. And you can see it's in there, but it's pretty stretched. So basically what we want to do is you want to go back up to UV texture, keeping UV quick shade selected, otherwise we won't be able to see the texture. So you have UV texture selected, and we want to up the scale, not that way, probably up the Y axis I imagine. Yeah, there we go. And as you can see, it basically takes everything, it's gone from about being that much of a texture to like doubling it. So that should serve our purposes just fine. There's no evident cutting points or anything, so we don't have to make this texture seamless. So yeah, that's basically the texture for the body, and we're just going to be repeating this process for each individual item, and it should relatively be about the same, but obviously you want to use different textures and stuff. So I'll go through the process one more time, and then you guys can do it in your own time. Alright, so going through the process one more time, we're going to be using this rocket rear hex shape back here because it's a slightly different shape to the cylinder, so it might require a bit different kind of tuning. Alright, so let's jump right into it. Let's go into our rocket geometry rear hex, and let's bring in the same thing as last time. So a UV texture, plug that into the bottom one, UV quick shade, plug that underneath the UV texture. It's important you do it this order as well, otherwise it won't work properly. Okay, so we got like a relatively fine one here, but they're quite stretched on the outside. So let's see what we can do about that. So what we want to do is go through the same process again. Let's bring in a new texture, maybe carbon. That might be a bit too dark. Let's try 316707. Yeah, that can work. Okay, yeah, so we don't want this stretched kind of look on it. So what we want to do is click on UV texture, and the same as last time, maybe up the scale a bit. We have to find the right one to mess with. Okay. Alright, let's try and oh, that's why, because I haven't changed it to cylindrical. There we go. So that's solved the problem entirely. So now we've got a texture around the whole thing. It does stretch a little bit on this side, but it doesn't matter so much since we can't see it that well. We can up the scale, I believe, if we want. So let's try and find the right. That's for the middle. That one's not. I mean, I guess it is a little stretched here as well, actually. So maybe doing that might be the. Oh, okay, maybe not, because it repeats here. Okay, well, I believe that's fine as it is. So yeah, that's basically the process. You just add a UV texture to the bottom of whatever it is. Doesn't matter whether it's a extrude, bridge, or edit. Add a UV texture to the bottom, and then make the texture type cylindrical, and then add a quick shade, and then bring in your texture, what you want to use. And don't mess with the texture scale in here, it doesn't do anything, so you have to do it in the UV texture. It would do something if the UV quick shade was ahead of it like this, but it's not. As you can see, it's changed it, so let's not mess around with that. But yeah, that's basically the process for texturing it. I'll see you all once we're ready to light and render the scene. Okay, so the whole model has been textured. Each individual part all has a UV texture and a UV quick shade on it, following the exact same technique as I showed you previously. So now what we want to do is go into the lighting and rendering portion. It's pretty basic. First of all, we should go into our Create tab and then our Grid, and press Enter. Bring one of them down below the model, and then make its uniform scale about 100. And then now we've got a ground plane for the shadow of the actual rocket launcher here to bounce off of, so we can actually have some sort of interaction with the lighting. Because if we just have shadow on one side, it's not really going to be as evident. So let's maybe pull it down a little bit more so it's further away from the rocket launcher. And now what we want to do is we want to bring in a camera, and we want to bring in a skylight. And you can see both of these up here. I bring in a camera by going to this No Cam tab up here, and then clicking New Camera. And as you can see in our network view, it's brought in a camera. We've got our grid as well. So we got our camera. What we want to do with this, you can go into the view of our camera, and this is where you can change the resolution and other like near clipping. So if it's like if the camera is up close too far, it begins to do this, where it takes away the geometry. So doing the near clipping lower would probably, yeah, as you can see, bring it so that it doesn't get rid of it. But we're not going to be that close, only if you do plan to make a render that close. Probably about here should be fine. Now what we want to do, let's bring that back up to 0.1, because that slows your computer down if you go too low. So let's call this main cam, and we call this our reflection grid. And first of all, what we want to do, now that we've got our camera in, you want to make sure, if you want to move around and position your camera, you'll notice that I just came out of it and the camera's there. If you want to move around and position your camera, you go to you sit in your camera and you highlight this padlock icon, and that will allow you to move the camera around without you coming out of it upon moving, like that. Okay, so let's go back into it, turn the padlock on, get us to about where we were there, and now we want to bring in a skylight. So click up here, and you see that bring in a sunlight and a skylight. We'll put them beside there. So it'll basically give a reflection of the sky, and the light source is the or not just the reflection of the sky, sorry, it gives you like a reflection and lights the scene with the colour of the sky, so like everything's got a blue hinge to it, and the sunlight is obviously the main source. With the skylight though, you can when you've got it selected, you can go into the sky environment map and then sun, and then you can change the use operation to location, date and time. And that will basically allow you to put in the time down here, or a day, where you want the sun to be. It's kind of clever because it basically just figures out what day of the year you want like the sun to kind of be positioned in, like exactly where it would be in real life. So let's say maybe 5 PM. As you can see, it's put the sun over here, and we've got a nice shadow basically coming from that direction going this way. So now we've got our lighting sorted out, we've got our ground plane and everything, or our reflection grid I've called it, and Now what we want to do is apply a material to the reflection grid. So I tend to go with white porcelain, because that tends to be a lot better than most of the like plasticky kind of textures like plastic, and it gives you a bit more reflection. So you can use whatever texture you like. I'll go with white porcelain, and that's basically the lighting done. What you want to do from here is we're ready to render it, so let's go into our render view up here. If you don't have it, you can open it up by clicking this little cross button and clicking the render view, Then you can go to the render button up here, ensuring that we're in our main cam. This is how you select your camera. And as you can see, it's fully textured, the shadow is hitting it in the right way. We're just picking up all the different pieces. With the preview selected, you can hold down the mouse button, left mouse button, and drag over the area you want to render quicker. So yeah, that looks pretty good. The textures are all fitting nicely, and the lighting's looking fine. So now what we want to do is render this. So if we change our well, first of all we need to bring in a render node. So we go up to this render tab up here, create render node, mantra. You can use RenderMan or Alfred, I'm not sure what they are. I've used RenderMan for Maya, but we can't access it on this because it's an apprentice edition of Houdini. So mantra for the default renderer, and then it will bring up this out tab. If you want to get back to the objects, you just click on it and go to OBJ, and we're back here. But yeah, if you want to get back to the out, go to out, and we're here. Right, so let's say we want to render from 1 frame to 10 frames. We're not going to have any movement, but at least then we'll have 10 different renders, whether any of them are corrupt or anything. We can even do 5 actually, because then that will save time. So from here, we just do render. We change render current frame to render frame range, and it will automatically put in the start and end frame range. And then if we click into rendering, that will bring up basically our sampling tab, which will allow us to increase the overall quality of the final render. So if we increase our pixel samples to 6 each instead of 3, and then increase all the ones, we'll say 1 into 2, and that will basically increase the overall quality of most of the aspects of the actual render. So we're basically there at that point. So if you wanted to render, you'd basically go up to this button, with all the lighting would be preset, and you'd render to disk, and that would basically give you the equivalent of like the full texture, all the lighting, all of the reflection of the ground plane, and everything into just the 5 frames you got here. And that's basically it. I'll show you a picture of the final render, what it looks like for me. And apologies if you had trouble following this tutorial. I'm pretty new to the software, and I'm pretty new to doing tutorials as well. So let me know if there's any problems. Leave a comment down below or anything. And yes, thank you for watching, and I'll see you later.